Hello everyone, Johnny Mine here, and today we are continuing to learn Japanese with Kirby's Adventure. Last time we started level 3, pattern building, so we continue that, but before starting the game, since today we don't have more kanji to learn, we'll continue the intro and finally start. Not sure if we'll see it fully today or also another time, but at least we'll start it. The story intro in particular. So can do that first and foremost. Should be here, but we can also see it from the previous video, yes. We have the title, which is Hoshi no Kabi,夢の泉の物語. So, the title of the game. But literally, the title of the game, apart from Hoshi no Kabi, Kirby of the Stars, which is the name of the Kirby series in general, we also have the title of this specific game, which is Yume no Izumi no Monogatari, which literally is the story, the tale of the fountain spring of dreams. And so actually this that we are about to read is the story of the Fountain of Dreams. So it works not only as the title of the game, but also this one which we are about to see is the story of the game, so makes sense. Okay, we can start. Akire kaeru hodo heiwa na pupupurando. First and foremost, we have akire kaeru, a compound verb. As usual, we'll check the accents of the compound, but also of the individual verbs, and also their meanings. Akireru means to be amazed, and also to be shocked. Also in the negative, to be disgusted, but the fundamental meaning is to be stunned, shocked, and so by extension either in the positive or the negative. Let's check its accent. Okay, let's see. Unaccented, okay. Akireru. Then we have kaeru. Should be accented this way because usually accented verbs are accented on the second to last syllable in their dictionary form. But in the case of kaeru and similar verbs, as we'll eventually see, since technically ae is a diphthong and the accent stays on the syllable and not and so on the first vowel of a diphthong, in this case the accent goes on the third to last mora. Moras are the shorter unit compared to syllables, which can be seen in Japanese mostly. Each kana, with the exceptions of the small yayu yo, ayu e o combinations. Each kana represents a mora. but in Japanese, both mores and syllables are used for different purposes. In the case of the accent, it's more important usually the syllable. And so, like in our case, kaeru on the ka. As for its meaning, it means on its own as a verb, to return, to come back, to go back. Also to turn over, but when used as the second verb of a compound, the meaning becomes to become extremely, to become completely. Maybe because of the original meaning of the verb to return, and so it kind of doubles, or even better, maybe it's in the sense of going and then coming back, and so make a complete lap, quote unquote. Either way, this is the meaning it has when it's the second verb of a compound, unless it's used for its original meaning, but usually it has this special meaning, like in this case, akire kaeru, yes, accented also on the ka, akire kaeru, means to be utterly amazed, to be stunned, to be disgusted. The fundamental meaning, to be utterly, because of the kairu, and then amazed, akireru. Then we have the particle hodo. Well, particle, it's technically a noun, then used also as if it were a particle, because in its fundamental meaning is extent, degree, measure, and also limit, bounds by extension. And so it becomes a particle also to the extent of. And so in our case, to the extent of being utterly amazed. Then we have an adjective, heiwa. I think unaccented, but we'll check, which means as a noun, peace, harmony. But in our case, we had the na, and so it becomes also a na adjective. In Japanese, they're called also keiyodoshi, but for now, let's focus on the more descriptive nomenclature, na adjective, which uses the na, as we can see in this very case. And so, of course, it becomes peaceful as an adjective, peace, from peace, peaceful. Let's see its accent. Yes, an accent is as expected, because it's a Chinese compound. So we have this adjective, peaceful, before and modifying the following noun, which is pu rando. Rando comes from land in English. we check its accent, but yes, it's as expected. This one follows the usual rule. There are some exceptions, as we have seen before. The usual rule is that the accent stays on where the original accent is, original stress in the case of English. So on the rando, the land of Pu, the name of this land, don't think it's an onomatopoeia on its own, but it definitely has kind of Pu, as for the sound, maybe also, as we'll see, of this of its peaceful inhabitants. But simply it's the name of this land. So this part becomes translated as the Pu land, which is technically the part before it could be seen also as a relative clause with an adjective instead of a verb, which is so peaceful, which is peaceful to the extent of being utterly amazed, shocked, stunned. So we can continue. ここで、一つの、事件が起きました。First and foremost, we have ここ, which means here. Again, it's part of the Koso Ado series. We have the different distances, ko closer to the speaker and the listener, so far from the speaker, close to the listener, and also used when referring to something not actually there, as a generic that. Are distant from both the speaker and the listener, though for the interrogative. In our case, we had ko to make the locative, and so this place here to make the other ones, so ko, that place there, asoko, which is the one of the exceptions, over there, that place far from both the speaker and the listener, so over there. And then we have doko. The ko, so, a are unaccented, while do is accented on the first syllable. Doko, which place, so where. Here we have here. Then we have the particle de, which means indicates the location at where something, where an action happens. As we have seen before, we use de with most verbs, except for those which mean the verbs of existence, which mean to be, as in there is, for example, also to live, in which cases we use the particle ni instead. But here we use we have a different verb, so de here. Then we have hitotsu, number 1 plus the general purpose counter tsu. Since tsu requires it's of strictly Japanese origin, and so requires strictly Japanese numbers. Hito, 1. We've also seen it in one person, which usually the counter for people as number of people uses nin of Chinese origin, but for 1 and 2 uses ri instead, and so hito, ri. Ri of strictly Japanese origin, so hito again. Here we have hitotsu, accented on the to. So 1 of a general thing. We don't use a specific counter in this case. Then we have the possessive particle no. So to make this number counter combination, modify the following noun, which in our case is jiken. I think it's unaccented, but we'll check. Means event, affair, incident, case, and so on. We could say in our case an incident, one incident, because we have the hitotsu before it, here, one incident. Well, let's check the accent. Okay, no, it's actually accented on the first one, jiken. Jiken. So I was actually pronouncing it correctly, but double guessed myself. Then we have the subject particle ga. So jiken is the subject of our sentence. And then the verb okimashita, from okiru, which means is accented, by the way. Literally means to rise, to get up, is the intransitive verb. By extension, it becomes also to get up, as in to wake up. And by extension, also to occur, of to happen, to take place of, for example, incidents like in our case. And so the translation becomes here, one incident occurred. Sorry, forgot to mention that we have okiru, which is a ru verb, ichidan verb, so we can drop the ru to add mashita, which is the polite form of the verb in the past. As a reminder, the polite form in the affirmative, by the way, there are other ones for the negative. The polite form in the affirmative for the present and future. Present used also as the future in certain occasions, but fundamentally the present is mas. So if I wanted to say, for example, I wake up, I would have said okimasu. While in our case we have mashita. The accent is on the ma in both cases, mas. As a reminder, iu at the end of the sentence preceded by an unvoiced consonant are barely heard, if at all, so mas. And also when in between unvoiced consonants, like in are barely heard, if at all, like in mashita. And so yes, we have the translation here. One incident occurred. Okay, we can continue. Pupupurando no hate ni wa Yume no Izumi to iu yume ga waku tokoro ga arimasu. First we have again pupupurando, so pupupurand, then the possessive particle no, and so connecting it and modifying the following noun, which is hate. We check its accent, but means limit, as in the sense of end, extremity. By extension, also result, outcome. But in our case, it's a physical end, limit. Its accent is okay on the last syllable, hate. As expected, in this case it's regular, since it's actually from the verb hateru, which means to end, to be finished, to be exhausted. And by extension also, well, unfortunately also to die, to perish, and to do utterly, to do completely. But yes, since its fundamental meaning is to end, to be finished, to be exhausted, then it's a ru verb, ichidan verb, and so we drop the ru, and we have the continuative form of the verb, which in this case is to make the noun, the corresponding noun, so end, extremity, limit. So at the end of pupupurand, well, why did I say at the end? Because of the following particle. Actually, we have two particles, a combination. Ni, which is the one I mentioned before, as in location, the location with verbs of existence, as we see at the end of this sentence. And then we have wa, written as ha, which is the topic particle. So, as for at the end of pupupurand, and then we have the rest of the sentence. Between quotes, those are the ones we can see here are the quotes in Japanese. One at the top. Technically, since each symbol in Japanese, be it kana, kanji, or also in our case the quotes, as we can see also immediately after, there are technically different kinds of quotes, but they are all quotes. Since all of these symbols technically stay in a single square, each is in a square of its own, the opening quote is on the top right of this ideal square, while the closing one here at the bottom left but as we have seen, these are the quotes. Then we have Yume no Izumi, which we have seen in the title of the game. We've even studied its kanji. Yume should be, we have seen that it's accented on the first syllable, but we'll check, of course, means dream. And good thing we did, because it's actually accented on the last syllable, Yume. Of course, this in standard Japanese, there might be different accents, positions of the accent because of dialects, but let's stick to standard Japanese, so Yume. Then we have the possessive particle no. So of dreams, of dream, in our case in general, dreams, plural. And then we have Izumi, which means spring fountain, unaccented, literally means water that exits from that Izu was actually in origin I-du with zu with duck 10, which is a longer form of the verb used nowadays, which is deru, to exit, and mi, an abbreviated form of mizu, water, especially cold water, because there's a specific word for hot water, yu. But yes, this is the Fountain of Dreams, also famous because it's a stage in Smash Bros. Then we have the particle to, which is used to mark that what comes before it is a quote, is used to report something. So even when there isn't, there aren't quotation marks, like in this case, you can have to marking that something is said, thought, and so on, depending on the following verb. And it's what's said, thought, and so on is marked with the particle to, so a quotation particle. In our case, we have the verb you, also written and or pronounced, even when written as I-u, also pronounced as you, should be unaccented. We have seen actually its kanji before, and it's a verb to say. Of course, to say, and by extension, even though there's technically a verb specified for that, to call. So, something that we'll see after, called Fountain of Dreams. Then we have again between quotes, but in this case it's more the first quotes are clearly the actual name of the fountain, of the place, as we'll see. These are more to put focus on the term, but still quotes. And again, we have Yume, so dreams. then the following particle, subject particle ga. And then we have a verb, waku. Let's check its accent, but there technically are more than one, but in this case, since we are talking about a fountain, a spring, it's the one that means to well up, to spring out, to gush out of water. Of course, then it also has extended meanings like to appear suddenly of, for example, tears or sweat, and so on. But the fundamental meaning is to well up, to gush out, to spring out, to surge. Its accent is unaccented, okay, so waku. So, after this verb, we have a noun, and so this verb and the previous parts are actually a relative clause referred to and modifying the following noun, which in our case is tokoro. I think it's, let's see its accent, but the meaning is place, spot. Let's see. Okay, unaccented, tokoro. And it's one of the most common ways to say place in Japanese, also figuratively, as we'll eventually see when we study the relative grammar. A place called Fountain of Dreams, where dreams literally spring out as if they actually spring out from the fountain. Then we have again the subject particle ga. And last but not least, the main verb, which is arimasu. From aru, the verb which means to be, as in the sense to exist, there is, usually in translation. As a reminder, aru is, well, also, as we have seen, also to have in the construction someone wa, so literally as for someone, something ga, so the subject particle, then the verb aru, literally there is, exists. And by extension, if as for someone, something exists, that someone has that something. But what I wanted to mention especially is that there's also, aru is used with inanimate objects, while there's also iru, unaccented, unlike aru, which is used with animate objects, so people and animals. Since in our case it's a place that exists, we use aru, of course. And so the translation of this whole sentence becomes, as for at the end of Pupupu land, there is a place called Fountain of Spring, Fountain of Dreams, sorry, where dreams spring out, gush out. And so there you have the translation of this first part of the story. I'd say we can at least check out one more part. Yeah, let's finish at least this video, then I'd say we can move on. So we are actually seeing the state of things before the incident occurs. We have the first sentence, which says, Yume no izumi ni wa subete no ikimono tachi no yume to kibo ga atsumarimasu. Again, we have yume, dreams, yume no izumi, and so the fountain of dreams. Again, we have the combination, the compound particle ni wa. As for at, the fountain of dreams. Then we have subete, should be accented on the first syllable, which means all. Is an adjective. When followed by technically it's a noun, which means everything, all. Then and yes, it's accented on the first syllable, subete. Then we add the particle, the possessive particle no, to, in this case, make it an adjective. As we'll see, there are some nouns that make the adjective with no instead of the usual na for adjectives. So all, modifying the following noun, which is ikimono tachi. First we have ikimono, which is a compound noun from ikiru. We have seen it when we studied the kanji. It's kanji, it's the verb, which means to live, and also extended living meanings, but the fundamental one is to live, accented. Then we have mono. We've also seen the kanji of this one. It's the usual mono, which is the one for thing, as in objects. And so, of course, being ikiru, ru verb, ichidan verb, we can drop the ru to make the continuative form. And so, in this case, to make the compound, to make the compound noun. And so we have literally living thing, ikimono. The accent is on mo, the mono, when in this compound. So ikimono. Ikimono. And then last but not least, for this noun, we have the suffix tachi, which is the most common pluralizing suffix, especially for people and animals. So perfect in our case, since it's living things, literally. And so, in this case, it's used to specify that it's living things. As we have seen, usually plural, the singular and the plural isn't marked in, isn't marked in Japanese, but let's get back. Okay, here. And a noun can mean either, but when we want to specify that a noun is plural, especially in the case of people, animals, and so on, we had tachi. There are other pluralizing suffixes, but the most common one, the one used also with more different, with various nouns, is tachi. The other ones are more specific, as we will eventually see. So, living things, then all living things, then we have, again, the possessive particle, so it's connected and modifies the following nouns in this case, as we'll soon see, which are yume, again, dreams. Then we have the particle to, which means with, used to connect two nouns with and the meaning and, can also be used with a single noun, as in the meaning with. For example, if I said with a friend, in that case I would use the particle to. So, dreams and kibo. We'll check the accent, but it means hopes. It's a Chinese compound. And so, yes, as expected, it's unaccented. Then we have the subject particle ga. And last but not least, we have the main verb, which is the verb, in this case, atsumarimasu. From atsumaru, we check the accent, but it means to gather, to collect, to assemble, but this is the intransitive form of the verb. The transitive one is atsumeru. Okay, both accented. Most like, as you can see again, we have a combination, transitive verb in eru and the intransitive one in aru. Most likely because the intransitive one is actually an older form of the passive form of the original verb, as we can see by the ma, and so the a vowel, and then we had, of course, ru. As a reminder, the passive forms of such verbs, it's now areru for u-verb, godan verbs, rareru for ichidan, for ru verbs, ichidan verbs. We'll ignore the irregular ones for now. But yes, just as a reminder, there are these combinations of verbs where the transitive one is in eru, and so is also ru verb, ichidan verb, while the intransitive form is in aru, and so u verb, godan verb. So together, then we change, as I've just mentioned, u verb, godan verb, we change the into I to make the continuative form, in this case to add the auxiliary verb mas, which is the polite form in the affirmative of the verb, polite present affirmative form. And so the translation becomes, as for at the Fountain of Dreams, all, or better, the all could be, and most likely is referred to the immediately following noun. So, at the Fountain of Dreams, as for at the Fountain of Dreams, the dreams and hopes of all living things gather. Okay, we can continue. そして、眠りについた生き物に楽しい夢と安らぎを与えるのです。We have そして、which means and is a conjunction, and then, thus, and now, and finally. It's used to have the meaning and also and then, and thus, and now, at the start of a new sentence, while referring to what the previous one said. So, thus, and what after what we have said in the previous sentence. Then we have technically a verb, a form with a noun, then the particle ni, and then the verb, but it's actually used as a whole, but we'll see it's the meaning of its components and its composition, of course. First we have the noun nemuri, from, let's check its accent. Let's see. Okay, unaccented, so hopefully the verb is also unaccented. The verb is nemuru, which means to sleep. Yes, unaccented. Being a u verb, godan verb, we change the u into I to make the continuative form, and in this case to make the corresponding noun. And so, sleep, as in the noun, or sleeping, as in the act of sleeping. Then we have the particle ni, which means to. We'll see in which sense according to the following verb. to its corresponding verb, which is in our case tsuita from tsuku. Unfortunately, it's not clear which tsuku, not only because it's written in hiragana here, but also in the dictionary. But as a reminder, the tsuku we have seen, and it most likely is one of these two, are to be attached, to be connected with, to adhere to stick, and also several extended meanings, but we'll ignore them for now. And also with the different verb, which is the one we have actually studied, to arrive at, to reach. So literally, I'd say in this case, it's most likely figuratively to arrive at sleeping. And so yes, this combination, nemuri ni tsuku, means to fall asleep. In this case, we have to change the verb into its ta form. Being a u verb, codan verb, we have to follow the different rules. So being in ku, it becomes I plus ta, just like for the te form. The in-between form was tsukita, tsukite for the te form. And then simply the k dropped, and so became tsuita. We make it, we turn it into its ta form to make the past. As we see, have as in plural, because, well, or also singular, but still in a generic sense. Have literally arrived at the sleeping, and so have fallen asleep, fell asleep. And it actually modifies, and so it's actually a relative clause, the following noun, which is again ikimono. Again, living thing, living things. Here the plural isn't specified, so it could be singular, it could be plural, it could be simply in general, most likely in this case in general, but we could also make it into the plural in translation in reference to the previous, the living things with the pluralizing suffix above. Then we have the yes, it always is the happy time with Kirby. Well, at least up to this part of the story, technically, as we'll see, then the incident occurs, but we'll see that we are almost at the end of our first hour. We'll stop at this and we'll continue the story another time. But yes, as I was saying, we then add the particle ni, so to, in the sense, as we see, to someone, to the living things, to the living things fallen asleep, which have fallen asleep. Then we have the adjective tanoshi should be accented, but we'll check, which means fun, enjoyable, fun, pleasant, happy, delightful. Yes, it's accented. In our case, maybe better pleasant, but doesn't matter. It's a E adjective, so we don't have to change it to then attach the corresponding noun modified by it, which in our case is again yume. Pleasant dreams. Then we have the particle to, which again means and, to connect it with another noun, which in our case is yasuragi. We check the accent. It technically is from a verb. Let's see, its accent. Okay, its accent is unaccented of the noun. The verb, on the other hand, is accented, so it's an exception, because technically when the verb is accented, the corresponding noun is accented on the last syllable. When it's unaccented, is also unaccented. But since words accented on the last syllable sound the same as unaccented words when we don't add a following particle or something like that, there can be some confusion, and that's why most likely why we have these exceptions. But anyway, the verb yasuragu, which means to feel at ease. Technically, this comes also from an adjective, yasui, which hopefully, yes, it's accented also, which means calm, peaceful, quiet. But the same adjective can also be used, technically with a different kanji, but more often than not it's not written in kanji in that sense. Also for cheap, inexpensive. And then there's also another yasui with a different meaning, but we'll leave that alone for now. So from the adjective calm, peaceful, quiet, we get this verb yasuragu, which means to feel at ease, to feel calm, to feel peaceful, to feel at ease. And then we simply change it's a u verb, godan verb, so we can change the u into i to make the corresponding noun, yasuragi, which means, of course, because the verb meant to feel at ease, peace of mind, tranquility. And so we have pleasant dreams and tranquility. Then we have the object particle o, also written and sometimes pronounced as wo, pronounced as such in careful speech and also, for example, in singing. But in usual speech, it's o instead, because of course it's easier to pronounce. Yasuragi o. So it's the object, and then we have, of course, the verb, which is ataeru, we check the accent, but its meaning is to give, to bestow, to grant, to confer, to present, to award. So the fundamental meaning is another verb of giving, more in the sense to bestow, to grant. And is unaccented, okay, ataeru. Yes, because technically it's to give, especially to someone of a lower status. And also other extended meanings, but let's focus on the fundamental one in this case. Well, technically, by extension, also to provide, to afford, to offer, to supply, but it's an easy extended meaning from to bestow, to grant, to give. And last but not least, we have no des. Technically, we have first the no, which technically nominalizes, can be used as a nominalizer for verbs, but also is can be used for the sense the fact, just like koto, thing, as in matter, fact. And in this particular construction, no with the preceding verb and then the copula, in our case des, and so the polite form of the copula, the plain one is da, means the expectation is that, the reason is that, the fact is that, and so on. The explanation is that. As a reminder, you can also find this no des, no da, abbreviated in ndes, nda. And so the translation becomes and so, thus, it grants to the living things literally arrived at sleep, fallen asleep, which have fallen asleep, easier, pleasant dreams and tranquility. And so yes, we have seen this part of the story intro. So before the accident occurs, which is this one, but we'll see it another time. Okay, let's say we can take our usual break of around 5 minutes. And after that, we can finally start the game itself. Okay, see you in around 5 minutes. And we are back. And so we can now actually start the game itself. I sure we have the intro, but which we are skipping. Okay, last time we've seen that we got percentage high enough to get a new title, which we can see here is Wakaki Tabi Bito. First we have Wakaki, which comes from Wakai, an adjective which means young, also by extension of course immature, as in green, as in inexperienced also, but the fundamental meaning is young. It's accented, okay, Wakai. Here we have a peculiar form of this adjective, Wakaki, because it's actually a form not used in modern Japanese, but can be sometimes be seen still in certain expressions or for stylistic purposes, but it's technically a classical form of the adjective. In this peculiar case, when we have the adjective in its ki form, waka ki, it's the attributive form, and so the one used when preceding a noun. Luckily, in standard Japanese, contemporary Japanese, we simply use the dictionary form wakai, and that's good as is. But in classical Japanese, which was more complex, of course, good thing it isn't nowadays, we conjugated it and had to put it into its key form, ki, to make the attributive form. So, young, of the following, as in, and then the following noun modified by it, which in our case is tabibito, technically a compound noun from tabi, okay, accented on the last syllable, which means travel, trip, journey. And then we have bito from hito. We have seen it before because we've also studied the kanji, if I recall correctly. Hito, unaccented, means person. It's the most common word to say person. Most generic also word to say person. Of course, in our case, changed into bito, so by adding the duck 10, because it's the second part of a compound and of strictly Japanese origin. And so, as we have seen, often there is this phonetic change. We add the duck 10, and so becomes voiced. And so, yeah, Tabi Bito unaccented also, okay. Means traveler. Literally a person on implied a trip, a journey. So better, so easier. Traveler. And so this title is young, also most likely as in immature, traveler. Let's check how it was localized. Yeah, in English it was localized as Lil Traveler, Lil from Little, Traveler. Because yes, of course, Lil by extension from young. Yes, we have our title. Now that we've seen this, we can start the game itself, our file. Again, we are at battle building. We've seen the mission before. We've tackled the arena, the stage. We can start stage 3. Okay, we have some Bronto birds waiting us there. We'll ignore them. Let's get sword. We have high jump, but I could have taken it to get up here. Honestly, it would have been for the best. But oh well. We have another of these cool rotating towers. Yeah, high jump here isn't actually the most useful. Actually, it was counterproductive there. But we got it. Okay. Let's get this ability, which is ice. Pretty sure we haven't seen this one before, but we'll see in a second in the description, because we've got before freeze from Mr. Frosty, which is a different ability in these early games, Kirby games. Of course, including this one where they originated. This is the first Kirby game with copy abilities. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we haven't. Yeah, we haven't seen it before, so we have to check it. Isu, of course, from Ice. We've only seen it in, I think, in the intro, which presented some copy abilities, but not in game. Again, Isu, just from English ice. Should be, we have seen it before, but it's accented on the first syllable, I'm pretty sure. Yes. And of course, it's also an abbreviation for ice cream. Aisu kurimu. Aisu. Tsumetai iki de teki o korase yo. First we have the adjective tsumetai. If I recall correctly, it's unaccented. It is. And it means cold to the touch. As I've mentioned before, for the verbs which mean hot, which are cold, which are atsui, but written with two different kanji, depending on if they're hot in the sense of weather or hot in the sense of to the touch, and so more in general. In our case, for cold, we have two, not only two different kanji, but also completely two different words. Samui for weather, cold as in of weather, and then we have tsumetai, cold to the touch. which is our case. E adjective, and so we have the following noun modified by it, which is in our case iki. Iki should be unaccented, I think, but it means breathe. Actually, it's accented on the first syllable, the thing we've checked. I think we have seen it at least once before during this very series. Breath, breathing. So, a cold, in our case we can literally say icy breath, and then we have the particle the. So, the means, so with your implied or simply an icy breath. Then we have teki. We have studied the kanji. We have seen it multiple times. Unaccented means enemy. Also opponent, rival, but of course in the case of video games like this one, enemy. Then we have the object particle o. And then we have the verb koraseyo. From koru. We check its accent, which means to freeze. An intransitive verb. Okay, yes, unaccented. Then we make it's a u verb codant verb, so we can change the u into a and add se ru. Here we can see only se, but it's because of further conjugation, to make the causative form, to make freeze, and so also actually a transitive form of the verb koru, koraseru. The causative form is a ru verb, ichidan verb, and so we can drop the ru to add yo, u, so long yo, which is the evolutional form, and so the most common meaning is let's. So the translation is let's make freeze the enemies with an icy breath. Then we have the other sentence. Kori o hoka no teki ni butsukeru koto mo dekiru yo. First we have kori, which technically comes from the verb we have just seen, koru, to freeze. Change the it's a u verb codant verb, so we change the u into i to make the continuative form, and also in this case, the corresponding noun, which means ice. And it's actually written usually with a different dedicated kanji for ice. We'll see it when eventually. Also ice, as in shaved ice, the one you eat, even though there's also technically a compound word for that specifically. Yes, the fundamental meaning from the verb to freeze, the corresponding noun to make ice, the noun for ice. And luckily it's also unaccented, as it should be according to the rules. Then we have the object particle o. Then we have hoka, which is a noun technically for another place, but can also be used by adding the possessive particle no to make kind of an adjective, which means another of the following noun. By the way, hoka is an accented, so hoka, hoka no. And so another, in our case, we have again teki, another enemy. Then the particle ni, which in our case is it means against, because of the following verb. Would mean towards, but also, as we have seen, unlike the other particle which means towards, written as he, which means the direction, this one means the destination, and so by extension the destination, and so where against something, against in the sense of bumping into, as we'll see soon, crashing into. And yes, we have now our verb utsukeru. We check the accent, which means it's technically a compound verb between a first part, which is bu. Technically, I think from, let's see if I can find it. Yes, technically from a verb which is butsu, but usually on its own it's not used nowadays in this form, because there's actually also with, I think, the same, mostly the same or similar meanings, utsu, and that one is used. But yes, the fundamental meaning is to hit, to strike, to beat. Then this is an exception, because we then keep only bu and immediately add the following verb, because the following verb on its own is tsukeru. We've seen it before, is the transitive form of tsuku, in the sense of to attach, to join, to connect, to add, and so on. Literally, to add a hit, to add a strike, and so also to crash into. But by extension, it becomes also to throw at, to fling at. And this is our case. We throw the ice at other enemies. Then we have the noun koto, modified technically by the previous verb. Koto, as we have said, means thing, as in matter, and it is used to as a nominalizing suffix the fact of doing the action of that verb. Then we have mo, the inclusive particle, also, even, and then the main verb, which is dekiru, to be able to do. As we have seen, this is again the structure koto ga dekiru, literally the fact of doing the action of that verb is possible. Here modified as we change the ga, the usual ga, into mo. When we replace, when we add the particles, the topic particle wa and the inclusive particle mo, ga drops. As we see, other particles don't drop, and actually, and so become a compound particle. For example, if we wanted to say to throw at even at other enemies, we would have said hokanoteki ni mo. Just to mention why in this case we had mo, but ga disappears. The same happens when with the object particle o is completely, we don't simply add wa or mo, it gets replaced by them. Technically, they get added and then o drops, but in the end, the result is that it's replaced. And last but not least, we have the sentence final particle yo, which means you know, hey. And so the translation becomes you know, the fact of throwing the ice, the frozen, the ice as in the frozen enemies above, at other enemies is also possible. This is the literal translation. And so in an easier one, you know, you can even throw the ice at other enemies. Then we have the final part, which is okina teki wa naze ka koranai. We have okina. We have seen it before. Is means big. There technically is an actual adjective, true adjective form in I, oki, big, large, great, and extended meanings. But there's also this form in na, and so being in na is in this case it's actually used only in its na form without and so before a noun, while the other form, the one in I, is used also at the end of sentences. But the meaning is the same. By the way, the accent of okina is on the first syllable, unlike oki, which is as usual on the second to last syllable, so the ki. So pig, and then of course we have again enemies in this case, as in general. Then the topic particle wa. As for big enemies, and so we have seen it before, for big enemies it's referring to bosses, mid-bosses, mini-bosses. As for big enemies, then we have Nazeka. Naze, we have seen it before, is the word accented on the first syllable. Is one of the way to say why, the interrogative why. In Japanese, there are other ones, but this is one of the fundamental ones. And then we add to it ka. When we add ka to interrogatives, ka most likely derived from the interrogative particle ka, but when attached to interrogative words immediately after, it becomes some of that interrogative word. So in this case, somehow, because some y doesn't exist, and Naze is technically also how in the sense of, again, why, for what reason, and so somehow and then we have, of course, our verb koranai. Again, koru, to freeze. Being a to verb, kodan verb, we can change the u into a, to then add nai, which is an adjective on its own, which means to not be, in the sense of without, there isn't, and is also used in combination with the negative basis of verbs to make their negative form in plain speech. Koranai doesn't, don't in our case, because we have said in the plural, don't freeze. So the translation becomes, as for big enemies, somehow they implied don't freeze, and then the suspension dots. Sorry, suspension points. Okay. And with that, we can continue. Oh, immediately, of course. Got eaten. Get it back. And of course, then the enemy throws it at us again. Okay, we actually have all these rooms, but as you notice, when I go back in one of these, well, not this one, because this is a peculiar one. Oh boy. Of course I get hit then. So we lost the life we got. But yes, these are actually connected rooms. I want to get a better sword. Are actually connected rooms, so depending on which one we take, we get to the yeah, the corresponding one in the other room. You can see also here. So we want to get, even though we can barely use it, the one for the this one is the for the maxing tomato. Yes. Then we'll take this one. As you can see, it leads to nowhere, and we have to destroy these blocks to then get to the end of the stage. Okay. Only 2, unfortunately, but better than other times. Okay, with that, we have the flag. The door changes the color, and so the flag means that the level is finished, as Kirby brings it outside of the level. And when the color of the door also changes, then it means that it's complete of the stage. Sorry, because as a reminder, level in Kirby games is the name of words. We have a museum. We have seen it, we have studied even the kanji, so we have seen it this before. Simply high jump. We've already seen it, but we'll take it. I'll just show it quickly again if you want to stop and check it again. And so we can tackle stage 4. Okay. Nothing there. We simply have to get the warp star, as you can see also at the bottom. Yeah, this cool scene of Kirby going around the tower and above. We can enter this room. Yeah, getting a high jump wasn't the best idea since we have some Meta Knights minions. So we get rid of it and simply inhale them. We have to defeat them all. And they technically get... again, we see Ska as in disappointment. They got health bar, as we have seen at the bottom. A global one for all of them. We have a sword again. Well, we would have also parasol, but we've seen both, so it doesn't matter. Okay, we have this part where you fly. Okay, we got that. Oh boy, just slow down. And we actually are already at the end of the stage, funny enough, so a pretty short one after, since there was mostly focused on the spectacle of it and of course the fight against Meta Knight's minions. We actually have these. And I actually see more kanji to study next time. So unfortunately, at the start of the next episode, we'll see those instead of continuing the story of the game. And of course, we'll also check the description then. But this is if you have heard of it before or played this game in English, it's a quick draw. It was localized as that in English, and honestly it's similar in Japanese, but as we can see, before leaving the kanji aside for now, we have also Kirby in the name. We simply play the minigame now. It's practically the original, an older version, an alternative version, the original one technically, since this came before, of Samurai Kirby, and so reaction time. Of course, by the name Quick Draw, you could tell that it's too slow. The theme is Duel in the West. Way too slow in this case, okay. Okay, better, much better. Of course, when I focus. Bonkers. Yeah, too slow. 16 is not easy. Unfortunately, only we get 5,000 points, so no lives. Of course, since we'll have to tackle it again next time, to check also the description after we have studied the kanji, we'll try to play it again and see how it goes. Since we have more time, we can check another stage, stage 5. We've actually got both, we get the invincibility candy. We got spark, but we've seen that before, I'm pretty sure. We used the invisibility to go around again another tower. Yes, this one was the one I was confused at first, but then we checked it because we hadn't seen the word Hipana. Fire flowers, literally, but as in sparks. Hit these enemies. Slow down. Okay, let's take a sword. Let's wait for the Gordo to leave. Okay, we get fight against the bonkers. And we actually haven't got hammer before, I think. So we'll have to check it. Hammer, in Japanese Hamma. As a reminder, N, when followed by the M, becomes also M by assimilation, and so double M. Hamma. We check the accent, but I think it's on the same, just like in English, yes, on the hammer, hammer, hammer. Of course, then the R sound doesn't exist in Japanese, so it becomes the tongue A. Let's check the description. Kogeki ryoku ga takai no ga Konobuki no tokuchou. First we have technically a compound noun, Kogeki ryoku, between Kogeki, a compound of its own, as in a Chinese compound. We've seen it before, means attack is unaccented. And then we add the suffix ryoku, which is means strength, power, also proficiency, ability. I think we've seen it in some other Chinese compounds, but in this case it's a suffix added to other Chinese compounds. And so we get Kogeki ryoku. I'll actually check. It doesn't show the accent on the online dictionary, so I'll quickly check my physical one. Okay, I got my physical dictionary. And we'll check straight up in the suffix section. If it's there, it's most likely it should show up there, and yes, it does. So the accent of compounds with the suffix ryoku become accented immediately before the suffix itself, and so immediately before ryoku. So in our specific case, koge kiryoku. As we'll see, more often than not, this is the typical spot for the accent in the case of such compounds. But of course, there are some exceptions. There are some suffixes which make the word unaccented. I've mentioned before, for example, go, as in language, Nihongo, Italia go, and other ones all become unaccented. So we have koge ki ryoku, which means offensive strength, offensive power. Then the subject particle ga. Then we have the adjective takai, which means high. Also by extension, expensive, as in high priced. That in our case is simply high. Of course, the offensive power is the is implied because it's not necessary. With the adjectives are good on their own in Japanese. The offensive power is high. Then we have no, which again is the nominalizer for verbs and adjectives. Also, in the meaning we can say the fact that the offensive power is high. Then we have another ga, another subject particle. Then we have kono, the adjective this. We see again another member of the koso ado family. Ko, so close to both the speaker and the listener. In this case, simply because it's physically, as if it we're talking about it being physically close to Kirby. And then no to make the adjective. As a reminder, we have seen before with ko for the locative, the place, this place, so the here. With no, the adjective. By adding re, we would have the pronoun. For example, kore wa, as for this. But in this case, we have the adjective, so modifying the following noun, which is buki. Buki, as we see, is weapon. It's a Chinese compound which literally means warrior, and so we could say martial, and then ki, which means device, instrument. So martial, device, instrument, and so weapon, arms. its accent is on the first syllable, okay, buki, kono buki. Then we have the possessive particle no of this weapon, and then tokucho. Tokucho is another Chinese compound between toku, we have seen it in other ones before, which means special, and then cho, which means well, also sign, indication, and so on, but also by extension characteristic. Literally it would be special characteristic, special feature, special trait, peculiarity, but in translation you more often than not find simply feature, trait, characteristic. And so the translation becomes the fact of its offensive power being high is implied the characteristic, the feature, the trait of this weapon. Then we have the rest of the sentence, of the description. Jobu na teki wa kono buki de yatsukeyo. First we have the adjective jobu, technically a noun, and of course we had the na to make the na adjective. Its meaning is, but let's check also its accent. Okay, an accented jobu means healthy. As we see, it's also, I can also anticipate it, it's used in the compound daijobu by simply adding dai of great. And that becomes accented on the jo, daijobu, which means safe, secure, and is also used to ask if someone is alright. But jobu on its own means healthy, and from that it becomes safe in alright and so on in daijobu, but more often than not as in robust, strong, solid, durable. So robust, I'd say, is the solid, is the durable, is the fundamental meaning. Not to be confused with strong as in of strength, because there's a e adjective for that. So we have in this case with the na, so modifying the following noun, which is again is the key. So robust, strong, in that sense, enemies, then the topic particle wa. As for robust enemies, then we have again kono buki, this weapon, the means particle, so with this weapon. And last but not least, the verb yatsukeyo from yatsukeru, we have seen it before. It's technically a compound verb, but there's the exception of the final part of the first verb becoming the double consonant for the following one. It comes from yaru, to do, but also colloquial, a colloquial form of to do. The usual one is suru, as we have seen, but also has the extended meaning to harm, to injure. Then we have again skeru, which means to attach, to join, to connect, to add. And so literally to add harm, and so to beat, to attack an enemy. Being the compound, just like skeru, because it's a second verb, a ru verb, it's done verb, you can drop the ru and add yo to make the evolutional form. So let's. So the translation becomes as for robust enemies, let's beat them, let's defeat them with this weapon. Because yeah, hammer, as it said, is quite a strong ability. And also quite useful, because as we can see immediately here, it can also be used to, as soon as I get there, you can strike it like this when you are on the ground, also, or also do this rotation when you are in midair. But it's quite useful because apart from being strong, you can use it. Funny enough, I destroy it while facing in the opposite way. Those. And as we'll see, those pegs, or however you want to call that, those. Here we get a maximum tomato and a 1-up. Of course it was a tutorial one, but as we'll see they're quite important because they can hide secrets, including switches which are required for 100% completion of the file. And with that we've actually got to the end of the stage. Perfect. Let's see if I can get... Nope, too late in this case. And so perfect, we've ended the stage just in time for our usual hour to end the stream. So next time we'll tackle stage 6 and going from there. But first we have to check the kanji of this of quick draw in Japanese. Then check the description of quick draw in Japanese and also its title. We'll have we'll play it again and hope it goes better that time. So unfortunately I'm losing hammer in between episodes, but oh well. If needed, we'll go back and get it here. And yeah, with that, oh sorry, wanted to close the game like this first, because as usual I want to check that our file got saved, but as it did, of course. And yeah, so we can actually close it, close the app. And so yes, I've said it all. And so next time, so on Wednesday, as usual, should be. We'll do all that. Okay. See you next time.